Hi, Alan Stratton from As Wood Turns. In my wood turning projects, I use several different finishes, generally determined by the type of project it is and the size of project. For example, if I want it to be for food safe, I will use walnut oil or beeswax and mineral oil mix. Smells good, but it's almost time to make some more. For larger projects, I'll use lacquer or walnut oil. And smaller projects, I'll use either shellac or lacquer, or there's always an advantage to doing any project with this. It's beeswax because it's a good utility finish and also doubles as a sanding media. It's also time now to upgrade the containers that I am using for the finishes. Lost the lid to this one, lost the lid to this one. I didn't have one for my lacquer. I was using straight from the can. So I bought a kit, a finishing jar kit from Craft Supplies, and I got it home, and I bought it primarily because I didn't think I could get a jar with a handle on it. Well, turns out when I got home, my wife says, hey, I've got half a dozen of these. They are very common in preserving fruit and canning. So this one's a kit, this one's not a kit. This one is a spice jar with a small acid brush embedded in it. So I can use it, and actually I made this cap for the lid to decorate it, but somehow it didn't get on there when it was glued up. So maybe we'll have to use this for a future jar. So let's make today a kit version, a non-kit version, and a small spice jar version.
I'm starting with the kit. It comes with a pint jar, wood for the handle, 1.5 inch screw, and a brush with the handle sawn off. I've carefully mounted the brush in long neck jaws, holding on to just the bristles below the metal and centering the cut handle. This should be enough since the only task here is to drill a 1/8 inch hole about 3/4 inch deep into the handle. This is awkward on a lathe, but I could not see doing any better on a drill press. Now for the handle. First, I want to drill the corresponding hole for the screw using the long neck jaws. Then, remount the handle between centers with the live center in the hole I just drilled. I want a simple shape for the handle. This is a utility object. The handle does not need to be an intricate finial. I want the handle to fit my hand with a sort of a knob on the top to ensure it does not easily slip from my hand. After sanding, since this is a utility object, I'm finishing with beeswax and mineral oil mix. I'm parting off the top and touching up the tippy top. To assemble, I'm drilling the lid with the same 1/8 inch hole, then driving the screw halfway into the handle. Then a short trip to the grinder to grind off the screw's head. Finally, twist on the brush and it's ready to fill and use. Next, I'm turning the smaller spice jar cover and brush holder. I'm mounting a scrap piece of walnut in the deep shark jaws. After a little rounding, I'm cutting a tenon on one end. Whoops, it was a little too small. I need to repeat the tenon a little larger. My tenon template broke. I need to make a new one. Now I'm reversing the walnut onto the tenon. After a little bit of trimming, I'll drill a recess for the jar's lid. The recess will be a little smaller and shallower than the lid. Then enlarge the recess to fit the lid with a square corner scraper. Then switch over to a 5/16 inch drill for the center. Then I switched to a 1/4 inch drill so the brush handle would be a tight fit. Now I'm remounting the walnut between centers using the previous mark on the headstock and the hole for the live center. I'm using a cone center for a live center. Now I can shape a simple cap and integrated handle. Then sand, finish with beeswax and mineral oil before assembling with a press fit. If it loosens over time, I will add some epoxy, but it does not look like I need it now. Now for the pint jar from scratch. Previously, I glued 2 pieces of pine to both sides of the wooden brush handle. Now I'm mounting the pine into the deep shark jaws with the bristles somewhat bent inside the jaws. I'm centering the live center on the center of the brush handle before tightening the scroll chuck. Now I'm turning the handle down to about 1/2 inch. I've cut down close to the metal on the brush. Later, I decided the brush was too high in the jar and made a spacer. Instead, I could have left more of the pine to serve that purpose. Next, I'm reversing the brush onto the long nose jaws. Now I'm turning down the remainder of the pine very carefully to avoid having the skew hit the metal. As noted, I should have left this wood in place a bit longer and avoided the risk. I broke away the remaining thin, short-grained pine. How about a little maple to cover the lid? I am mounting a 1-inch thick square to the face of the scroll chuck jaws with tailstock pressure while I do some initial roughing and cut a tenon. Next, I'm reversing the maple onto the tenon into the chuck. The task now is to cut a mortise or recess to fit the jar's lid. I'm using a gouge to hog out some of the middle and a square corner scraper to cut the walls. As usual, this is a cut, test, process until the lid fits. If I did not have a square corner scraper, I would use my skew for this work. As I prepare to drill a 1/2 inch hole for the brush handle, I'm doing this lid a little differently. Rather than drill the lid separately, I'm securing the lid into the recess with duct tape, then drilling the metal lid and a hole through the maple at the same time. This will ensure alignment. Now I'm reversing the maple with an expansion hold onto the chuck. The lid size is also a perfect expansion mortise. I'm checking the thickness to make sure it is not too thick or too thin. Then sand and finish this piece. Now I'm mounting another piece of scrap walnut to the long nose jaws. I need to make a spacer to hold the brush lower in the jar. Leaving the pine longer would have avoided this. The spacer is just a piece about 1.5 inch long with a 1/2 inch hole in the center for the brush handle. Next, I'm mounting a walnut spindle between centers. This will be the upper brush handle. After some roughing, I'm cutting a tenon on the end. Size is not critical except to fit my long nose jaws. Now swap out the centers for the chuck and remount the spindle. This mount is so I can drill the end to fit the brush handle. After some roughing, I'm drilling the 1/2 inch brush hole. Then capture the end with a cone live center. This will stabilize the walnut while I shape a simple handle. Here again, it is a simple handle to fit my hand with a knob to avoid slipping off. And sand, finish, and assemble. The only problem was that I did not include the lid cover in the glue up. I realized it was too late after the glue had grabbed. The complete kit was $12.85. The spice jar was salvaged from our kitchen. The wood was scrap, and a set of 3 acid brushes was $1.13 for the small jar. For the jar from scratch, the brush was $1.15. The wood was scrap. My drinking jar was free, but a set of 12 on Amazon is $19.09. I wish the jars were not glass, but if they were plastic, I'd worry about the solvents, especially lacquer thinner, attacking the plastic. So I'll just have to be careful with glass. These will serve me for a long time. If I break one or need more, I'll just turn another. I may put a balloon over the bottom to reduce slipping. We'll see you again next week for another wood turning video. Please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and tell your friends. Always wear your full face shield. Goggles are not enough protection. Until next week, this is Alan Stratton from As Wood Turns. Let's keep turning.